and welcome back to Tell Me Your Ghost Story. I'm your host, Cassie Askin, and today we hear Tameera's story and Margot's story. First, we hear Tameera's story. On a trip to Los Angeles, Tameera and her boyfriend unknowingly checked into one of the city's most infamous landmarks, the Cecil Hotel. When they opened the door to their room, they weren't alone. A man was in their room, dressed like he'd stepped out of another century. He carried on packing his suitcase as if they weren't even there. They changed rooms immediately, but the weird experiences were far from over. So without any further ado, let's hear Tameera's story. Hey Tameera, tell me your ghost story.
In 2016, my husband, back when we were dating, he invited me to go to a League of Legends tournament in Los Angeles. I had no idea what that was. I'm not a video game person at all. I didn't even know the industry had enough money for to host tournaments all over. So I just agreed because I had nothing to do, and it was Halloween weekend. And I was working at J.C. Penney's at the time, and he invited me at the beginning of October, and I put in for a time off, and they denied me the very next day, and so I quit just so I could go. We drive down there on Saturday morning, and as we actually get to LA and get closer, when I saw people on the street and how dirty and stuff it looked, I was like, okay, I wasn't expecting this, but we were still dating and I didn't say anything about it. So we get to the hotel and we go inside, and the lobby did look nice. And I do remember when he sent me the photos that the lobby looked nice. Now that I'm older, looking back, when you only see photos of the lobby, that's kind of a sign, but I didn't think anything of it at the time. And so we get into the lobby and it looked fine. And we walk in and they give us our key. We go to the elevator, and the elevator did have an odd vibe, but I didn't think anything of it. And we get to our room and we open the door, and there is a man in our room. And we're kind of in shock just standing there. The man does not acknowledge us. So me and my husband have different memories about this. Remember that he did not look at us at all. My husband said, no, he looked at us, but he wasn't looking at us. He was just looking in our direction. I don't remember that. To me, I remember that he was not looking at us. I remember him walking around. It was an older man. He was a white man, and he was like packing a suitcase, and it wasn't like a suitcase that we would buy now, like where it has like a handle and like the rest of the suitcase. It was like briefcase, but a suit. When you watch a movie and they have like 3 items folded and it's in a suitcase and it's just a little handle. And he was packing that up, and he had on, I didn't know the word at the time, but I guess it was long johns is what they're called. He had on like long johns, and he did not, from what I remember, he did not look at us at all. He did not say anything to us. He didn't do anything. It was like we were not even there, which that's odd, because if you go to a hotel and someone just opens your locked door, you're going to notice that. I would think so. I'd never experienced anything like that before. Neither had my husband. It was the weirdest thing ever. And we were standing there, and to me, it felt like that was a long time that we were standing there just staring because we didn't know what to do. We didn't say anything to him. I think we were too in shock. And eventually we just were like, okay. We turned around, we go back into the elevator, back into the lobby, and we're like, hey, we were really awkward about it. I remember that because, like, I don't know, it's like we didn't know how to say it, but we were like, there's a person in our room. And the front desk lady, I still remember her face. Her eyes were like big, and she was just like, and she didn't say anything, and she just got a manager. And the other manager didn't say anything. And she was like on her computer, I guess. I don't know what she was doing, maybe booking us for another room. But no one said anything like, no, there isn't, or we don't have anyone booked for that room. You're mistaken. Let me go check. There was no rebuttal, fight, no argument, nothing. She just gave us a new room, and she said, okay, like, this is your room number, whatever, handed us the keys, and she made it a point to say that you're going to be the only ones on the floor. And I thought that was weird, but I just assumed that she was trying to reassure us because we just had a man in our room. So maybe she was just trying to make us feel better by saying no one's going to be there. So you shouldn't have someone in your room this time. But I did think it was weird because what kind of hotel has one guest on a floor? I've never had that before. That's really weird. But I just was like, okay, like whatever. Go back into the elevator, get back into our room. And then I was rushing because it was already late and we had to be there at a certain time at the event. And we showered, and oh my God, the bathroom was the weirdest setup. Okay, in a normal bathroom, if it's just a shower, there's no tub, and there's a step to get into your shower. They didn't have that step. We turned on the shower, water went all over the floor. And it was like a pedestal sink. I remember that. And we were just like, what kind of layout is this? How, like, water spilling on the floor? Like, this is insane. And we just got ready. I remember I did my makeup really quick. We went to the event. We had a decent time. We went to dinner after, and then we got back to the hotel, and that had to be 11-ish. I don't remember it being like that late. It had to be at least 11:30 or midnight. So I take my makeup off, I wrap my hair up, put my pajamas on, we go to sleep. And I ended up being woken up. I'm a very light sleeper, to add, by the way, and especially when I am somewhere that I'm not familiar with or comfortable with. Every time I go to hotels now, like, I can never sleep. So I'm a very, very light sleeper, and I get woken up because I'm hearing tapping on the windows. And I'm sleeping on, I guess if you could say, if you're behind the bed, I'm on the left side and my husband's on the right side where the window is. But I wake up because I'm hearing tapping, just tap, 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 tap. I did not get up, and I didn't wake my husband up. And I just hear it just tapping constantly. And I'm like, that doesn't make any sense. Like, how is there tapping on the window? I'm like, we're in downtown LA and we're high. I don't know how many floors that hotel has, but we were high up there. There had to be no trees around. I don't know any birds that are around at nighttime that would tap on your window that late at night. So I just couldn't imagine what it was, but I did not get up to go look at it. I can't remember if I fell back asleep and then was woken up again, or if it happened right after. But I remember being up again because I hear running in the hallway. And I'm like I said, I'm laying on the side that's closest to the door. I like to lay by the door. I don't know why. I just feel like if something happens, I can get out quicker. So like, even in our house now, I sleep closest to the door. And so I wake up and I'm staring at the hotel door, and I'm hearing running around the hallways, and I'm like, didn't she say we were the only ones on the floor? How is there running around in the hallways? And I could tell that the feet were feet of a child because of just the weight of what it sounded like. And I'm just staring at the door, listening to the running. And that's when I got really scared because I thought that was really, really weird to hear running around in the hallways of a floor that we are supposedly the only ones on the floor. I didn't wake my husband up again. And I just was like, okay, well, I mean, I don't know what to do. I'm not going to get up. I'm not opening the door to go look at that. So I remember it felt like a while I was just staring at the door, and I eventually just went to sleep. And we woke up the next morning. We both said to each other that we had weird dreams, and it wasn't like they were nightmares. Oh, like I had this scary dream, this and this and this happened. It wasn't like that. The best way I could describe it, like a fever dream. I don't know how to put it into words. Like, I wasn't like afraid, but the dreams were just, they were just like weird. I don't even, like, they were just weird. And my husband said the same thing, that he had weird dreams. And he was even like, let's like get out of here. Like, this place is like odd. Not only is it like dirty and disgusting, but like that was a weird night. I've never done this, but we got up and I just was like, I'm packing my stuff. I'm not going to brush my teeth. I'm not going to shower. I'm just going to throw my clothes on and I just want to get out of here. And we left early in the morning. Usually when you're on like a trip or whatever, you kind of lay around in the hotel for a bit. We got right up and packed our stuff and threw on clothes and just were like, we are out of here. I was driving and my friend had texted me and she said, no, like just asking, how was your weekend? How was your Halloween weekend? What did you do? And I said, oh, I just, went to this tournament, this video game tournament. It was fine, but we stayed at this hotel and it was like super weird. And I was telling her all the stuff that happened, but she was like, what the hell? She's like, you were at the Cecil Hotel? She's like, that hotel's haunted. And I'm like, no. She was like, they literally made a season of American Horror Story based off of that hotel, which I did not know that. I didn't watch that show at the time. And so after she said that, I'm like in the car looking it up and I end up telling my husband and we're like, no wonder all of that weird stuff happened. Looking back now, we still always talk about it and we we always wonder, was that man we saw a ghost? Because the fact that I don't know, how do you not acknowledge someone that you see opening your hotel door? And the fact that the front desk people didn't say anything or didn't want to check. The suitcase was old timey. Like it was just odd. And I remember hearing about the story about the Elisa Lamb lady after the fact. And I'm like, no wonder that elevator had like a weird ass vibe. Like something was like just off about the elevator as well. Our original room where we saw the man in there compared to the room that we ended up eventually staying in. I don't quite remember everything, but I do remember that our original room where the man was in seemed to have a different color palette. I remember more blues and a more standard hotel type of vibe, whereas the room that we stayed in, I remember more darker colors, like more oranges, which kind of matched the lobby because the lobby was very fun. And I remember it looked like a cool place to hang out and had like a lot of oranges and reds and like I remember circles, like fun circles on the carpet in there and like reddish, like burnt orange couches and just like a more fun vibe, which matched our room. But the room that we originally were going to stay in did look different, like a more standard hotel room. I have been following this woman and she claims that she takes peeks at the afterlife. I believe her. And she recently did a peek at the Cecil Hotel. And one thing that she called out was that she saw children running around the hallways. And after seeing that, it validated my story more because I also heard children running around the hallways, even though we were told that we were the only people that were on that floor, and that it was weird that little kids would be running around at like 2 or 3 in the morning. So seeing that really confirmed that what I heard was real.
After hearing Tameera's story, I couldn't help but think of David Robert Pollock's experience in episode 3 of Tell Me Your Ghost Story, the Dewey Hotel. Just 1 block away from the Cecil, David had a truly strange experience while delivering mail to a hotel in downtown LA. I don't want to spoil it, and David tells the story far better than I ever could. So go listen to that episode if you haven't already, but let's just say his story has all the markings of a possible time slip. Between his story and Tameera's, I'm starting to wonder if there's something really weird happening with time in downtown LA. Up next, we hear Margot's story. Margot recounts a mystery from her childhood. At a birthday party at Chuck E. Cheese, she and her sister met a girl named Sally. The three became fast friends, but after that day, Sally was gone without a trace. Margot and her sister never stopped trying to find Sally. Years later, in a very unexpected place, they finally found her. So without any further ado, let's hear Margot's story. Hey, Margot, tell me your ghost story.
All right. Well, I was about I want to say around 5 years old. And my sister and I, we're very, very close in age. We're almost exactly a year apart. I guess they call it like Irish twins, you know? So we're exactly a year and a week. And so because of that, we always ended up having joint birthdays when I was a kid. So we went to Chuck E. Cheese for our birthday one year. My sister and I grew up in a really, really small town. And so Chuck E. Cheese was a good 30 or 45 minutes away. And you know how when you're a little kid and you meet those little kids like on the playground or at the pool or something, and you just immediately become best friends, and then it's always kind of sad because then you never see each other again. When me and my sister had our birthday party at Chuck E. Cheese, we met a little girl like that. We met this little girl named Sally, and she was right around our age. And we just had the best time at Chuck E. Cheese. We were playing for hours, and I remember crying because I didn't want to leave because we decided that we were all going to be best friends forever. And I do remember at one point, even I was having such a great time playing with Sally that her aunt came and got her. She was with her aunt, and they went to go get their picture taken. And I remember being sad because I wanted to keep playing. So we were having the best time. And I remember when we had to leave, like, I was sad, I was crying, you know how little kids are. We never saw her again. And through the years, though, my sister and I, every so often, we would bring her up and talk about her, and we would be really upset that, we couldn't see her again. And every once in a while, my sister would just bring her up and be like, "Oh my gosh, I wonder what happened to Sally." And I remember we would ask my mom, we would say, "Do you have Sally's mom's number?" And my mom didn't even know who we were talking about. She was like, "Who is Sally?" I remember like wanting to call her on the phone. So anyway, years went by, and I was kind of, I guess, every kid at some point in their life, they get to a point where they have to conceptualize death, and that can be very difficult to wrap your head around. My grandma died shortly after we met Sally, and I was kind of a little too young to understand what was going on. Years later, when I was about 8 or 9, my grandpa died, and we had to go to the cemetery to pick out his gravestone and to pick out a plot where he was going to be buried. And so my mom, my dad, and my sister and I, we went to the cemetery. And, my parents, they're just taking a tour with the guy, walking around, looking for plots. And, my sister and I were bored. We didn't want to be any part of that. So we were just kind of walking around the cemetery. And this cemetery, it was near the town where I lived, but it was kind of just out in the middle of nowhere. And it's a huge, huge cemetery, and it's a super creepy cemetery, honestly. It's like a Civil War cemetery, and some of the graves go back even further than that. I think some of the graves go back to like the 1700s, so it's kind of like a creepy place to be. And we're just wandering around, and all of a sudden, my sister just stops, and she's just staring out into the cemetery. And I'm like, "What are you looking at?" And she was like, "Oh my God." And she looked super pale, and I had no idea what she was freaking out about. And she was like, "It's Sally." And I was like, "What are you talking about?" And she was like, "Look," and she went and pointed, and she was pointing at this headstone, and I went and looked, and we look at this headstone, and there's a Chuck E. Cheese picture, like laser engraved onto the headstone, and with Sally's name on it, and she was buried with an adult woman. And I just remember I got the goosebumps so bad. I was like, "There's absolutely no way." Like, I almost didn't believe it. Like, my sister kept saying, like, "It's Sally," and I just couldn't believe it. I just did not believe her whatsoever. So, we leave and we tell my mom about it, and my mom just is kind of like, "Yeah, I don't know. I think you guys are just telling stories." But we got on the family computer that night and we looked it up, and obviously, like, I was so young when I met Sally. I don't know the exact date that we went to Chuck E. Cheese, but we looked up her name, we looked up her aunt's name, and we came across an obituary. They were killed in a car accident. The month and the year added up exactly. We showed it to my mom, and honestly, I don't think my mom ever really believed us, but I remember it just freaked us out really bad. And, like I said, we're coming to terms with death and what it means to die. And I had like really bad death anxiety as a kid. I was always freaking out just thinking about, what if you die and nothing happens? That was honestly like the scariest thing I could ever think of when I was a kid. And it's weird because even though it really freaked me out for the longest time, at the same time, it almost brought me like some sense of comfort. Like, I feel like the timing of when we saw Sally's grave. I feel like the timing of when all that happened had some kind of meaning and bearing on what I was going through at the time. Like, I still don't 100% know what to make of it, but I do think that it kind of helped me come around to not being able to explain everything. I think it kind of made me okay with not knowing what happens after, because at least I know that there is something, like, there is some kind of order to the universe. There's some kind of order to the way that things happen. And even if I can't understand it, I think it just kind of made me have peace with that. So, I came across Sally's grave when I was like 8 or 9, and then so I do have another story that happened years later, a long time later, probably about 10 years later. Right after I graduated high school, I moved in with my now husband. I moved in with my current in-laws. So my husband and I, we were just dating at the time. This happened when I was 19. I was in the living room, sitting on the couch with my husband and my father-in-law, and sitting across the room was his younger sister, my husband's younger sister, and she was playing the Switch. She was just playing video games. And we're just sitting there talking, and his sister asks my husband, "Hey, can you call my phone? Because I have no idea where my phone is." So he pulls his phone out and he calls her phone, and I'm sitting next to him. I see him go into his recent calls, click on her name, call, and the phone starts ringing. Well, the phone rang 2 or 3 times, and I'm looking directly at his sister, who is just still sitting there playing her game, just kind of like her head kind of cocked with her ear up, kind of listening for her phone, but not really paying that much attention. And I'm looking at her, and the phone, somebody picks up the phone. And I'm looking at her, and her mouth is not moving, but there's somebody speaking on the other end. And it sounds a lot like her voice. And I hear her go, "Hello? Hello?" And then she starts saying my husband's name over and over again. She goes, "Eli? Eli, are you there?" And I'm sitting there. My father-in-law can hear it because my husband had his, I guess, his phone speaker turned up all the way. So it wasn't on speaker, but it was really loud. And I look over at my father-in-law, and his eyes are like super wide, and he is looking at his daughter, and he's like looking at his son, and he's like, what is going on?" And then the phone hangs up. And the three of us just like looked at each other, and my husband goes, like, looks at his sister and is like, "What are you doing? Like, are you like just messing with us?" And she was like, "What are you talking about?" We start arguing with her. We're like, "What was that about?" Because we're all just kind of creeped out. And the whole time she was like oblivious to what was going on. She just gets up and she starts looking for her phone again. And my husband keeps trying to call her phone, and it's not ringing, it's just going straight to voicemail. And we're like, "Okay, that's super weird." Well, she comes back into the living room and she shows us her phone, and she said it was dead the whole time. And we're like, "No, it wasn't. Like, you're screwing with us." She shows us, she hits the power button, and like the screen flashes with the low battery thing that shows that it needs to be charged. And then I'm like, "Oh my gosh, my husband is playing a prank on us." And then so I make him go into his contacts and like, or go into his recent calls, and I'm like, "Man, prove that you actually called her phone." And it was her phone number. And she charged her phone. When it got enough battery where you could open it, she got on there and she went to her recent calls, and it never showed at all that my husband even called. Like we tried to debunk it and like could not. We still talk about it to this day. Every once in a while we'll bring it up, and something that I don't really like to think about too much, because if I think about it, it starts to creep me out. I actually I actually posted this story on Reddit one time, and I ended up deleting it because nobody believed me, and everybody in the comments were like, "Oh no, your husband was definitely cheating on you. That wasn't paranormal. He was covering up." That is not what happened at all, but it does sound really just dubious, I guess.
Thank you so much to Tameera and Margot for sharing their stories. Please show your support of the show by rating and reviewing the podcast wherever you listen. It really makes a difference. Find photos from the show on Instagram at Tell Me Your Ghost Story Podcast, and find me on TikTok at Tell Me Your Ghost Story Pod. If you have a true paranormal story you'd like to share, please email it to tellmeyourghoststorypodcast at gmail.com. Until next time, my friends, good night to all, and to all a good night. Bye!